issue between employers and insurance companies. I think Rita alluded to this in her discussion as to whether insurance companies were covering expenses associated to COVID-19, and whether that was an addition that ended up to be an expense for employers.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions that will still hopefully keep coming. Thanks to the conversations on those on the chat wall. We want to slowly close on this particular segment, but we would like our panelists to still stay on, and all the delegates that are with us. Remember, our hashtag is the hashtag Employers Conference 2020. I want to introduce Ms. Gilda Odera. She is the first the first national vice president of the Federation of Kenya Employers. Welcome, Ms. Odera, to give us some comments as we draw this conference to a close. The conference resolutions that you feel are the key takeouts thus far over the last 2.5 days.
Thank you. Good morning. It's been such a wonderful, insightful morning by our panelists. And before I go into the recommendations and some of the resolutions, I just want to take time to thank the panelists, the speakers. Rosa Ndwati, who's a partner at Anjarwala and Kana, just challenging us on consolidation of business laws, just the relevant laws to just make sure that in the future we don't get caught without having the regulations and laws in place for us to be able to quickly jump in and move forward. So I want to thank you so much, Rosa Ndwati, for your presentation. My good friend and long Rita Kavasha, the CEO of Isuzu East Africa, thank you so much for your insight into what has been happening, your experiences. You've been seeing the comments by the attendees, and I'm sure they're like me. I find that the time was so short with our panelists this morning. There was just so much to hear from them, and I would have loved to interact much more with them. Thank you so much, Rita, for all your insights. Ms. Lindiwe Semofolo, all the way out there, taking your time to be with us. It's been such a pleasure hearing from you. I also want to thank my colleague, Mike Masharia, my colleague in FKE board. Thank you for coming in and jumping right into it. I know you were away and you have given us such insights as well. Jahesh Patel, who jumped in as well, and Wanjiko. Thank you so much. Now I want to cap, and what I'm going to do is just touch on the highlights of what we are taking away. We've had great panelists, great expert speaker on the first day as well, and they'll be thanked much later. And I can only summarize it in a very short time because we are running out of time. What I want to start with is to first of all recap. Some of you were not here with us throughout. We covered the topics of impact of technology on business model and the workplace. And we also looked at human capital trends and the skills of the future. And then the third topic that we focused on was the regulatory frameworks for the changing business environment. And that was handled very well by Rosa Ndwati this morning. Now, I want us to look at what we'll be recommending to government and policymakers. On the first day, Professor Vincent Ogutu shared with us and said in Japan, they're talking about co-COVID and not post-COVID. And that's one thing I want to continue talking about. And changing from saying post-COVID, you've heard our speakers this morning saying that we don't know what next. Then they will say this may end and we jump onto the next. So let us use the word co-COVID as we go forward. And we are saying that we need to develop and implement recovery strategy, or just strategies that support building resilient enterprises. Rita Kavashi has shared with us some of the things they've gone through. And we need to build these strategies to create jobs. It is very encouraging that so many resilient and inward-looking organizations have done very well. And you've heard from some of them today. In fact, I want to, if there's anything we should not forget this morning that will capture everything today, is to say, look inward. That's your take home today. Look inward. So government policy makers, as you look inward, let's develop and implement strategies that support building resilient enterprises. And in the short term, the strategy should support enterprises, finance and cash flows, that supply chains and operations as well will be improved. And in the medium term, it should harness the opportunities that COVID-19 has provided. There's always a silver lining. Let us not focus on the negative. Let us look at the opportunities. What are the opportunities? What are we seeing now that we were not seeing before? And then we also need government and policymakers. We need to look at the long term to see that it should assure predictability of the business operating environment in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Indeed, we don't know how long this is going to take, as I said. Secondly, let's strengthen the linkages and collaborations between industry, policymakers, and learning and training institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, that is why we had representatives, the VCs invited from Strathmore and University of Nairobi, the leading learning institutions. And we were challenged as employers that we should not sit back and then complain that they're not churning out the right sort of people and what we need. We need to go to them and tell them these are the skills that we need. We need to even as we are looking at reskilling, they need our help to be able to tell them that these are the areas. And they say those who have done that with them have succeeded. Thirdly, for the government and policymakers, we should strengthen public-private partnership initiatives to address the pandemic impact on enterprises and economies, not just in Kenya, but in Africa. It's good we're now talking about free trade in Africa. So let's not just focus on Kenya itself, but we need to think beyond, because these are our partners that we will be working with. COVID has taught us something, that when the skies close, can we, through our road networks, be able to do things within Africa? This is a challenge for us. Fourthly, we need to review regulatory framework to support the changing business environment and the work of the future, including remote working arrangements. You can see today that we have a hybrid. And I believe going forward, we will be having hybrid. Working from home, virtual work, other emerging types of work and ways of working. We have some people in our FKE offices at the studio there today, but we're talking remotely from where we are virtually today. And that's some of the things that are not going to go away. Now, for the enterprises and employers, fuse people with technology for greater value. When we talk about people for greater value, we heard this morning that we need to look into our organizational culture. We heard that those who had in place good organizational culture, those who built good relationships with their employees and their partners are the ones who are doing well right now. So enterprises need to redesign and adopt business processes that support technology, human partnerships where human arguments augment technology, and technology enhances what we as humans do. But we must not lose the human touch. That was another reminder to us. So it's a challenge that as we look inward, how can we balance the two? Humans and machines should work together. How can we balance the two so that we don't lose the human touch but we leverage on technology. Another challenge to us. For enterprises and employers, let's embrace agility as well in order to survive in more volatile, uncertain, and complex and an ambiguous world. We need to strengthen reskilling, both upskilling. We need to advance our workers' current skills. As I said, as we build relationships with them. And this is also a challenge to the workers, the employees. We had said, I heard something from Mike Masharia, who said that if an employee says, I'm calling in, I have the flu, do we demand a letter? How do we deal with it? And that goes back to how then we also should develop that relationship where the employee feels part and parcel of the organization and knows that I'm not just calling and saying I'm not well because I don't feel like going to work, but knowing that this is my organization. And so we should include enterprises conducting strategic workforce planning to determine the skills gap, understanding what they need, how are they struggling, what does the organization need, and to improve training options for the employees and foster a culture of lifelong learning. We learned, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that we need to learn to learn. Now, we also, as employers and enterprises, should provide internships and apprenticeships, opportunities to learners. I know that's been happening, but a lot more needs to happen. Learners were encouraged that even if there's no pay, although as much as possible, there should be some facilitation. They should look at it as the apprenticeship as an opportunity. It's like a sponsorship by the employer. Now, employers and development partners are to support establishment of the Business and Disability Network in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday, the network was launched to promote employment of persons with disability. We need to do things differently. We need to embrace persons with disability. We need to look inward, look at our organizations. How friendly is the environment to persons with disability? Are we making sure that as they come in and as they work, they're in a comfortable environment in this new normal? Employers in Kenya need to support the strengthening of the FKD, Kenya Business and Disability Network, that was launched yesterday. For our social partners, let's strengthen and embrace the use of social dialogue in addressing emerging employment and labor relations issues and challenges. And this should include adopting and accepting the use of alternative dispute resolution mechanism as a preferred way of solving the employment and labor relations disputes and conflicts. On our first day, we heard from the CES, and we also heard from the representative of the Secretary General Huge, who spoke on his behalf, Francis Atwoli, that when this whole pandemic hit us, no push and pull, the employers and the workers' union came together, and the CES confirmed the same. And we all agreed, let's see how to meet each other halfway. And that is how it should be. We should establish tripartite technical level working committees to support the operations of the National Labor Board. Now, for government and enterprises, we heard today, and I want to repeat, that we need to support the growth of small businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, we know very many people, 1.7 million, have lost their jobs, but they're not sitting back at home doing nothing. They're establishing small businesses to survive, and we need to encourage them. We need to grow their businesses, the new ones and the existing ones, into established, resilient, productive, and profitable enterprises. And this goes to both the government and the enterprises. We also need to strengthen the healthcare and health systems in Africa, not just Kenya, to deal with emerging health pandemic, including dealing with wellness and psychosocial development of the workers. I know we spoke about the legal issues. One of the speakers mentioned that there's that catch-22 when it started, but this is a pandemic. So what happens when one of your employees falls sick? There's the legal aspect of the patient confidentiality, and then there's the aspect of protecting the other workers. And so there's a lot that needs to be put in place, and it must not stop at this point, but we must continue preparing. This, to me, has been, in a way, a great opportunity. I've been saying that this COVID-19 pandemic has just been a preparation for us. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to encourage all of us not to sit back, but to continue looking beyond COVID-19. I'm not saying that we want it to end so we go back to the old. We are in a new normal and we should be looking ahead and thinking ahead. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you so much. A round of applause for Ms. Gilda Odera, the first National Vice President, FKE, for a brilliant summary of how the entire event has been. Ladies and gentlemen, we're really running out of time here, so it's my humble duty to bring in Dr. Francis Atuoli, who's the Secretary General, Central Organization of Trade Unions, for very brief remarks. Dr. Atuoli, over to you.
Thanks so much, Trivia, and your colleague for the great work that you are doing. I am Bharat Adams. I'm COTU's International Advisor.
Baraza, we seem to be losing you there. Let's just get your internet back on track, and then you have just about a minute to summarize.
So, I get to
Baraza, you're back with us now, yes. Just 1 minute to summarize and pass the message from Dr. Atuoli. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. To speak to what
all right,
being pessimistic and crying about everything. And that's the point we need to start from. The other issue that you want to speak to is the issue of the ADR. The issue of alternative dispute resolution is key, but the main problem with the issue has been the issue of funding. The support from social partners, as well, particularly from the government, has not been forthcoming. And this has caused a lot of problems in terms of solving the disputes arising from employers and workers. Then there's this element of constituting a technical committee under the Ministry of Labor, okay, COTU, and the government. So another issue we need to solve it. And
Baraza, we seem to be there. Let's just try and refix your internet connection. In the meantime, sorry, Adams, we seem to be having a challenge with your internet connection. Just disconnect and then reconnect again. In the meantime, let's bring in Dr. Habil Olaka, FKE National President, for his quick summary on this event, because we're running out of time. But as I will come back to you, just log out and then log in again so that we see if your internet connection is better, so that you give us the summary. But for now, let's bring in Dr. Habil Olaka.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. I think let me first of all start by recognizing the Principal Secretary for Labor, Engineer Peter Toom, the representative for COTU, who was on the floor, Executive Director, Jacqueline Mugo, FKE Management Board, and all the delegates present. I think we can all attest to the fact that this conference has been a great success. A great success not only because of the excellent delivery, but the quality of the discussions. It has been an eye-opener to all of us who participated. When we began, I indicated that even though COVID-19 has brought on us a health and economic crisis of a magnitude never witnessed before in a century, it has also provided us a lifetime opportunity. We can choose to be overwhelmed by the challenge or to rise above the challenge and utilize the opportunity it provides. As one speaker indicated, fortune favors the bold and chance favors the prepared. We have to be bold in our actions as we respond to the challenges we face. The pandemic has been very disruptive because we were not prepared. We cannot continue behaving like the way we did at the outbreak of the pandemic. It's complex, yes, but we are equally up to the task. Today, early in the morning, when I was reading my Bible, I read a very interesting verse. And that's Genesis chapter 8, verse 22. And it said, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. I'm confident that this season will not consume us, but rather is an opportunity for us to do exploits. What can consume us is actually lack of preparedness. There is a need for enterprises to embrace the evolution that has come in terms of technology. COVID-19 has shown how dynamism in business can help enterprises stay afloat in the event of a pandemic. The traditional space confined nature of work is no longer applicable. Embracing flexible business operation models and support for tech-based startups and existing business ideas is the way to go in building resilient enterprises. This will not only create new and safeguard existing jobs, but also create more wealth and hence a faster growing economy. The government needs to provide the necessary regulatory framework that will encourage a faster transition into a tech-based economy to stay economically competitive. Distinguished delegates, collaboration between the industry and the training institutions is very crucial, not only in bridging the skills gap, but also ensuring we develop the right skills for now and the future. With the changing nature of work, training institutions face the risk of running obsolete programs if they do not adapt to industry needs. Addressing the skills mismatch in the job market will come in handy in addressing the unemployment problem being experienced currently. It's time industry starts demanding the learning and training institutions provide for industry-linked programs and researches. In addition, we need to shift our skills development approach from supply-based to demand-oriented. We cannot have our children invest over 16 years of their lifetime and parents and public enormous resources to produce educated people that have no skills, competencies, and attitude that can help them become successful in life. Industry, policymakers, and learning and training institutions need to work closely together to ensure we get the right skills for the future. The Federation of Kenya Employers will continue to support these linkages, including asking the employers to provide internship, apprenticeship, and job opportunities to our learners and youths. The conference has also emphasized the importance of collaboration among social partners in protecting enterprise and jobs through MOUs and implementation of contingency measures, especially during a pandemic has helped safeguard livelihoods and gives hope for enterprises in designing and implementing post-COVID-19 recovery strategies. In this regard, I want to ask workers and employers to embrace the spirit of the tripartite MOU that was signed between the Ministry of Labor, COTU, and FKE in dealing with employment and labor relation challenges. In addition, I ask us to embrace more the ADR mechanism in resolving trade disputes and conflicts.
All right.
Support the Federation's initiatives in supporting employment of persons with disabilities. The FKE Business and Disability Network that we launched yesterday is our network. Let's embrace it and through it help our inclusion capacity.
All right.
Let me take this opportunity.
Sorry, I have to interrupt because of time. Just kindly summarize in maybe just 1 minute.
Yes. I'm actually just on the last comment, which is really to take this opportunity to thank all the delegates that have participated in this conference. Special thanks, of course, to our guests and speakers, panelists, expert presenters, development partners, and all the rapporteurs and service providers. Thank you so much for supporting us.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc. Sure. Go ahead, sir.
But I wanted to take this opportunity to invite the Principal Secretary for Labor, Engineer Peter Toom, to address us and officially close the conference. Thank you, and karibu Bwana PS.
Mr. PS, Peter Toom.
Thank you very much. The National President of the Federation of Kenya Employers, Dr. Habil Olaka, the Executive Director and CEO of FKE, Madam Jacqueline Mugo, the Secretary General, Central Organization of Trade Unions, Dr. Francis Atwoli, distinguished panelists who participated in this conference, members of the Fourth Estate present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege and indeed an honor to preside over the official closing ceremony of this employers' annual conference for the year 2020. Such conferences, which bring together actors from public and private sectors, non-state actors, and other stakeholders, are valuable in sharing notes and experiences and forging common approaches to tackling challenges and addressing emerging issues in our operational environments. I take note of the exciting topics you have covered, ranging from impact of technology on business models and the workplace to human capital trends and skills of the future, and regulatory frameworks for the changing business environment. I'm informed that these contemporary topics have elicited constructive discussions during the conference. This is clear testimony of the conference that the conference was well conceptualized and has indeed realized the goal of generating progressive ideas about tackling challenges related to employment. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is currently in the grip of a global pandemic of unprecedented proportions. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected all sectors of our economies and aspects of our lives. Here in Kenya, we are witnessing a second wave of the pandemic, which has resulted in a resurgence in infection rates across the country. The labor and employment sector is one of those that have been hardest hit by this pandemic, right from its onset. Many people have lost jobs, while those still at work are facing challenges adapting to the new world of work. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya witnessed a doubling of employment rates from 5.2% during the first quarter of 2020 to the current 10.2% during the second quarter, thereby eroding significant gains made in the pre-COVID period. As has been the trend in the past, the youth have faced the brunt of job losses in this country. The highest proportion of the unemployed during the period referenced above was recorded in the age groups of 20 to 24 and 25 to 29, each registering a 20% unemployment rates. The government, of course, takes cognizance of this and has developed strategies together with our social partners to address this and many other labor and employment-related challenges. The biggest priority for the government in the short term and the medium term will be to protect existing jobs and businesses while implementing strategies for the recovery of lost jobs and supporting businesses which have been severely affected by the pandemic. In the medium and long term, the government focuses will be on supporting businesses to navigate the post-COVID period and bolstering the private sector to create jobs for those who may have become unemployed during the pandemic and those joining the labor market. Towards this, the government has developed a post-COVID economic recovery strategy aimed at securing jobs and spurring employment creation in the country. I will highlight key strategies in the labor and employment sector, which include: one, profiling of emerging skills in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic to inform training skills, reskilling and upskilling of workers to improve their employability in a dynamic labor market. Two, establishment of modern job centers for jobs matching and forecasting. And three, development and implementation of a business turnaround solutions program targeting affected businesses which have either closed or are struggling to remain afloat. Ladies and gentlemen, the government plans to establish several funds to enhance social protection for workers and alleviate related cost burdens on employers. These include the Occupational Disease Fund for protection of workers directly affected through death and disability from occupational diseases, including COVID-19. The other one is an employment insurance fund to cushion workers in financial distress and give short-time relief to workers when they become unemployed. And the third one is the Migrant Workers Welfare Fund to enhance the protection of migrant workers and offset expenses associated with the plight of workers in distress. These funds will be contributory in nature and will adopt proactive and progress practices in compensating the injured, the diseased, the unemployed, or the migrant workers in distress, thereby reducing financial costs on employers, improving labor productivity, and fostering industrial harmony. Further, the government is implementing several policy and legal institutional reforms to facilitate execution of mandates within the labor and employment sector. Key amongst these reforms are development of the National Internship Policy and National Policy on Labor Migration, review of 5 primary labor laws to align them to requirements of the Constitution and emerging issues, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, and strengthening the capacity of the Alternative Dispute Resolution Mechanism, commonly known as the ADR. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, all these initiatives are daunting endeavors that require multi-stakeholder and multi-sectoral collaborations. The government has adopted a collective and consultative approach to these initiatives in order to ensure their effective implementation. I wish to use this forum to appeal directly to all stakeholders to support the government in this process. And at this juncture, let me take this opportunity also to thank our social partners, that is FKE and KOTU, because they have been our support base since this pandemic visited us in March this year, and we've really worked very closely together. This is a time when, you know, as a government, we need to ensure that in developing our policies, we are working together with everybody and the stakeholders in that sector. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the dawn of the future of work. What appeared to many as an abstract concept just a year ago is now a reality which employers and workers have to contend with and confront at the workplace. Here in Kenya, the pandemic has already resulted in a paradigm shift in employment. We are confronted by the reality of Kenyans who have lost jobs and who not only need new jobs, but also need to adapt to a changed labor market. Even those in employment are required to adapt to this new world of work. As a result, practices such as remote working, virtual meetings like this conference, and accelerated automation of services have been widely embraced in addition to adherence to basic safety and health protocols. The labor market too will change significantly as a result of this pandemic. Dynamics in skills demand will have a major implication for education and training institutions. Both workers and employers will need to invest in skills development in a manner unlike any before. Indeed, many experts agree that in the future, the success or failure of many organizations and individuals will be dependent on how they navigate the transition into this new normal. Many public and private sector organizations will therefore have to, one, redesign infrastructure and provide amenities and equipment at their workplaces in adherence to the government guidelines, review operations to support efficiency, and undertake capacity development of workers to ensure they remain productive in an increasingly dynamic labor market. Technology will play a big role in unlocking the full potential of our people at the workplaces during and beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. It will also be a major tool of organization in their alignment changes in the labor market. I must stress the importance of remaining in step with these changes and put in place measures to ensure that our enterprises and workers remain relevant in this competitive and fast-changing world. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, allow me to show my appreciation and gratitude to FKE for successfully organizing this conference. This appreciation is even magnified when we consider the extraordinary circumstances under which the conference was held. The Federation has therefore set an example to our organizations on how to go about such challenging engagements in the prevailing situation. It is my understanding that the special workshop report will be prepared and distributed, and I wish to urge the Federation to include key takeaways and concrete proposals which can be tracked to follow up and progress updates during the next conference. We have seen unprecedented collaboration between government, our social partners, that is FKE and KOTU, during this pandemic. And as a government, we have never had an experience of this magnitude before. And I want to take this opportunity specifically to thank those who collaborated with us. Remember when in March we didn't know how to navigate the issues of the pandemic. KOTU, FKE, and us sat and decided to come up with some regulations, of course, mapping them on the requirements of ILO. And that is what the government gazetted, and that is why there was a lull on issue strikes and industrial harmony. And going forward, because we don't know how long this pandemic is going to take, the government wishes to assure everybody that we are still working with that zeal and pace to ensure that as we proceed and we are having now the second wave of infections, our workers are protected, their interests are protected, our labor laws will be implemented, but in a manner that we all sit and discuss. Finally, I wish to appreciate all those who participated in the forum for the valuable contributions you made. It is my hope that these discussions will shape your views and perspectives on employment going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, let me take this opportunity to congratulate also our media houses for having worked with us very, very closely in propagating what we've been thinking as a government in order to alleviate the suffering of our people during the pandemic. It is now my duty and pleasure to declare this annual Employers Conference for the year 2020 officially closed. Thank you, and God bless you all. Asanteni sana. Mungu awabariki.
Yes, thank you very much for wrapping up succinctly what we've been discussing over the last 3 days. We want to thank all the speakers who have been with us today. In particular, it's Rose Duarte Mutero. Thank you very much, and coming in to do it live, as well as Mr. Mike Masharia, who's with us. Thank you very much, Mike. Ms. Rita Kavashi, Ms. Lindiwe Sepumolo, thank you so very much. And to all the delegates out there, thank you very much for being with us through the 3 days. Some of you have been here throughout the 3 days. The hashtag is still hashtag Employer Conference 2020. And to my co-moderator, Trevor, thank you very much for an excellent opportunity to work with you.
Absolute honor working with you, Waziri. You know, most of them did not know. Thank you so much. And thank you to the sponsors as well for coming through. This marks the end of it. We see a lot of them. We're projecting them right now. We can't mention all the sponsors, but we sincerely thank you.
Pata kila kitu upendacho kwa M-Pesa kupitia *334#.
Mzungu alikuja hapo kitambo akapata watu wanachimba gold. Is this a gold mine? Then Muluya akasikia akasema, hii ni kolomani.
Fun and food got together beautifully at GMC Place. Enjoy our succulent meals in a serene setting with a varied choice of fun games for the little ones. Cup it up with a cuppa or a cocktail, all available to your taste. Make your reservation today on 0701 560 560.